I haven't seen sunshine in a couple of weeks, so I thought I'd put the camera up and finally put some of my comments down for this review. So I had to change that setup pretty quick. I'll probably have to go over that on another video when things don't go to plan. So the idea behind all of this ultimately is to really help someone. I'd like to hopefully influence someone who may be looking at purchasing a camera, maybe stepping into filmmaking for the first time. This is very much a real world handling review of how it was going out and shooting something that I would enjoy doing, as well as testing the camera out in hopefully a couple of difficult conditions and maybe some favorable conditions too. I've released both videos already, so I think you should probably watch both of those first if you haven't already. Assuming you already have, great. Video 1, Discovery, was a collaboration I made with Naji, who does streetwear and parkour. Had a call with him, and thankfully he was able to facilitate me on short notice. We both had an idea of a couple of locations that we could film, and the story, which I wanted a little bit of a narrative, so it wasn't just clips. So after discussion, we kind of found the story about Naji over the last year that had been inspired about London and the architecture, which kind of helped further his journey into streetwear. So we just thought it'd be a nice framework in which to shoot and maybe tell a little bit of a narrative around his journey. What I'll do, actually, I'm going to play the video and I'm going to give you my thoughts about it. I may go to and fro a little bit, discussing a couple of clips, and then I'll come back with some final thoughts. But on the whole, I really did enjoy the use of the camera and the experience. And again, I keep thinking I'm forgetting to thank Panasonic, but they did loan me the camera. There was no strings attached. They weren't expecting, they don't get to see this video before I release it. It was just frankly an honor to test the camera and to have it for a week. So let's get started. So basically, the first shot was challenging in terms of time of day. Although it was getting into golden hour, it was the autofocus I was a bit worried about. However, by the end of the day, I was getting a bit more confident on a shot like this. Again, the lens itself is 3.5 starting, so it's not ever going to be that shallow. In terms of going from body to face, it was pretty reasonable. I always did quite a few takes because I wasn't sure how it was going to perform. One of the biggest issues that I have, I might just actually head back to the start, was the 100 frames a second. It was a little bit softer, and also because it was it was 420, and I believe it drops to 8-bit, which is very disappointing. It was quite challenging in the grade. So at 50 or 25, and I believe that you can actually go to 8-bit even at 4K 50, even though they do have a 10-bit setting on there. The menu systems are a bit convoluted there, I believe, so it would be nice if it was a little bit cleaner, so it's a lot harder to jump into 8-bit rather than 10-bit. The 50 frames performed well. It was just 100 I don't think I'd ever really use for anything other than, say, something that was social posting, because I just felt it dropped down and became pretty soft and mushy. All the other shots, I was very happy with the dynamic range. I often like this particular shot, shooting in, very harsh sunlight. You've got the shadows and you've got daylight, which is a little bit unkind, but performed well, and the colors did handle quite nicely. Had the RS2 on, it was on the gimbal the whole time, so the stability worked fantastically. I could not complain about that at all. And the actual handling, and other than my point about the 50 and the 8-bit being a little bit easy to make a mistake on, I thought that the menu systems coming from the GH5 were fantastic. Very at home with that. It was a pleasure working with Naji, and I was glad to tell a bit of his story through this this short. And yeah, I think we were both happy with it. So let's go back to some final thoughts. So now that you've viewed, if there are any technical questions or questions that I haven't covered, please do drop a question in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, as well as if you do have any queries, I might be able to answer them, technical or not. First thought off the bat, dynamic range. I do think that's the camera's best selling point. I believe it comes second in terms of dynamic range on mirrorless cameras, according to Joe London. It is noticeable, even shooting against the R6 in a couple of the locations I filmed on another day. I did notice that when I A&B it, that the S5 did take the edge on that, so that was a definite plus point. I think the only downside, like I mentioned, was the 100 frames, or going up into higher frame rates, and when it does strangely drop to 420, which personally I wish that Panasonic would maintain a 422 10-bit. It seems like a real loss to be going down to 420, especially when you get into grading and you want that extra latitude of pushing colors. Grading wise, I didn't push anything too far or go for any type of extreme grade. I just wanted to bring out the colors and somewhat of a natural look, or at least colorful or bright, vibrant look, so you could see what the colors are doing. I did tweak a couple of colors, shifting them in various directions. So I actually spent more time repairing some of the issues that was caused with the 100 frames going down to, I believe, 8-bit, which caused no end of problem. But again, if you were shooting in mostly 25 or 50, you probably would avoid a lot of those issues. Autofocus, on the whole, this is probably Panasonic's best autofocusing system that I've seen. 20-60 lens does seem to work quite well with it. I haven't tested any other L mount lenses. I was relatively pleased and happy with what we got. It was a 3.5 I was shooting at mostly. Whether that made its job a little bit easier, and often Naji was already quite isolated in there wasn't too many faces that it was having to pick out with, and I was trying to shoot him in, to be the hero of each shot. However, one I did test with the Sigma MC21 adapter, which I didn't do on this particular shoot, but later on the shoot with Esley, which I'll talk about at another point in time, that it didn't have continuous or autofocus. So with that being said, I think the autofocus is limited to the L mount. So whereas I might give it maybe a 7 out of 10 or 7.5 out of 10 for the operation of the autofocus, it would probably drop to maybe a 5 overall, or maybe a 4.5. It's better, it's a step forward, and I do welcome that. So well done, Panasonic. However, I think there's a little bit of work to do. If autofocus was, as good as Canon or Sony, it would be a no-brainer. A, for the cost, and B, for the dynamic range added, and the GH5 like general Lumix stability. IBIS, as always, very good, no problems. At one point when I was hand-holding the 20-60 lens with the S5, just at home or in the local park when I did my initial test, I was pretty happy with the handling. Again, not much to say with Lumix in general when it comes to IBIS. Very good stability. I think this camera sits between a run and gun and maybe punching a little bit above its weight in that respect. Like with the anamorphic features, with the exposure features, the scopes, and various extras that you always get. The only thing it would really be lacking would be like a false color, since they give you everything else. So where it gets a bit murky is if you were to say, I'll get a focus puller, or I will have a bigger crew to work with, then you might be like, well, why would you use the S5? You'd probably get a higher end camera if you're going to have all that crew, and it's going to be a bigger production. So I think I personally would shoot with it if it was more in a run and gun style, but the autofocus prevents it from fully being a run and gun beast, be a one-stop shop camera. I think with it, it would give you a lot of things, but not everything. I did enjoy the overall experience with the camera. I would definitely take it out and shoot again. I've yet to decide what my next camera is going to be, and at the moment it would actually be somewhere like a Canon R6, and or a camera like the S5. However, I'm still waiting to see the GH6. I really would prefer a full frame, so I'm really waiting to see what the GH6 would do. I'm not sure if the S5 will be my next camera, but it's definitely in the running, and this experience has definitely helped kind of give me some food for thought, and I hope it has given you some food for thought too. Please do check out the two full versions, the one I did with Naji and Esley. I do have a shorter version of Discovery which has some other shots, but that may just go out on my Instagram channel, so I'm not sure if I will release it. I may look at some vintage lenses or some other breakdowns on shoots that I've done. Until then, I'll see you on the next one. Bye!